They left me there to die. My own blood, my own family. Under the scorching sun with nothing but the clothes on my back and secrets that could destroy everything they had built. I shouldn't be here telling you this story. I should be bones bleaching in the sand. But I survived. And now, for the first time, I'm going to tell you exactly what happened, who betrayed me, and the terrible truth I discovered that made them want me dead. My name is Amira. I was born into Saudi royalty, the youngest daughter of a prince whose name you would recognize if I spoke it. But I won't. Not yet. Because this story isn't just about me. It's about power, betrayal, and the price of knowing too much. Listen carefully, because every word I'm about to share could have gotten me killed. In fact, it nearly did. It started 3 years ago, on what seemed like an ordinary evening in Riyadh. I was 24 years old, educated in London, fluent in 5 languages, and completely naive about the darkness that lived within my own palace walls. I had everything a princess could want. Designer clothes, luxury cars, servants who anticipated my every need. But I had something else too, something dangerous. I had curiosity. You see, in my world, curiosity wasn't a virtue. It was a death sentence. Especially for a woman. Especially for someone who started asking questions about things that were meant to stay buried. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to that night. The night everything changed. I was in the library, my favorite room in the entire palace. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the gardens, shelves packed with books in Arabic, English, French. It was past midnight. Everyone else was asleep, or so I thought. I was reading through some old family documents I'd found in a locked drawer in my father's study. I shouldn't have been there. I shouldn't have picked that lock. But I did. The documents were financial records, ledgers, transactions going back decades. At first, they seemed boring, just numbers and dates and names I didn't recognize. But then I saw it. A pattern. Millions of dollars flowing to accounts in Switzerland, the Cayman Islands, Dubai. Money that didn't match any legitimate business I knew our family owned. And attached to one of the transfers was a photograph. I'll never forget that photograph. It showed my uncle, my father's older brother, shaking hands with a man I recognized from news reports. A man wanted by Interpol. A man connected to arms dealing, human trafficking, terrorism financing. My hands started shaking. This couldn't be real. There had to be an explanation. But as I dug deeper into those documents, the explanations became worse, not better. That's when I heard the footsteps. Heavy, deliberate, coming down the marble hallway toward the library. I quickly stuffed the documents back into the folder and slid it under a stack of books on the table. The door opened. It was Rashid, my father's head of security. A man I'd known since childhood. A man I trusted. "Princess Amira," he said, his voice cold in a way I'd never heard before. "Your father requests your presence immediately." Something in his tone made my blood run cold. It was 3 a.m. My father never summoned anyone at this hour unless something was seriously wrong. I followed Rashid through the silent palace, our footsteps echoing off the walls. He led me not to my father's office, but to a room I'd never been in before. A room in the oldest part of the palace, where guests were never taken. Inside, 3 men were waiting. Not my father. My uncle, the one from the photograph, and 2 other men I didn't recognize. Their faces hard, their eyes empty. My uncle smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Amira," he said softly, "we have a problem." I tried to keep my voice steady. "What kind of problem, Uncle?" He walked slowly toward me, his hands clasped behind his back. "You were in your father's study tonight. You found something that doesn't belong to you, something you were never meant to see." My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst through my chest. I don't know what you're talking about. He laughed. It was a terrible sound. Don't insult my intelligence, child. The drawer was locked for a reason. You picked that lock. Very clever. Your European education taught you some useful skills, but it also taught you to ask questions. Dangerous questions. One of the unknown men stepped forward. He was holding something. At first I thought it was a phone, but then I realized it was a recording device. He pressed play. My own voice filled the room. I was talking to my friend Layla, a journalist I'd met at university in London. I was telling her I'd found something disturbing in my family's records. I was asking her advice about what to do. I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. They'd been listening. They'd been watching. How long? Days? Weeks? Months? You see, Amira, my uncle continued, loyalty is everything in our family. Everything. When you started poking around in matters that don't concern you, when you started talking to journalists about internal family business, you became a liability. And liabilities must be dealt with. Where's my father? I demanded, trying to sound braver than I felt. Does he know you're doing this? My uncle's smile faded. Your father is a weak man. He loves you too much. He would never make the hard decisions necessary to protect this family. That's why I'm here. That's why I've always been here. Cleaning up the messes, protecting our interests, doing what needs to be done. He nodded to the two men. They grabbed my arms. I tried to scream, but one of them clamped a hand over my mouth. They dragged me out of the room, through a service entrance I didn't even know existed, and into a waiting vehicle. Not one of our family's luxury cars. An unmarked van with blacked-out windows. We drove for hours. I lost track of time. They'd bound my hands and blindfolded me. I could feel us leaving the city, the smooth highway giving way to rougher roads. The air grew hotter, drier. We were heading into the desert, the empty quarter, the place where people disappeared and were never found. When they finally stopped and pulled me out of the van, the heat hit me like a physical blow. They removed my blindfold. We were in the middle of nowhere. Nothing but sand and rocks as far as I could see in every direction. The sun was just beginning to rise, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. My uncle wasn't there. Just the two men and Rashid, the man I'd trusted. He wouldn't meet my eyes. This is where you die, princess, one of the men said. His accent was Egyptian. Your family will mourn you. There will be a beautiful funeral. They'll say you died in a tragic accident. No one will ever know the truth. Please, I begged. I won't tell anyone. I'll forget everything I saw. Please. The man laughed. It's too late for that. You already told your journalist friend. She's been dealt with, by the way. Car accident in London 2 days ago. Very tragic. Layla. They'd killed Layla. Sweet, brilliant Layla who only wanted to make the world a better place. Rage flooded through me, overwhelming even my fear. You're monsters, I spat. All of you. No, the man said calmly. We're realists. Now, we're going to leave you here. No water, no food, no phone. The desert will do the rest. If you try to walk, you'll be dead within a day. If you stay here, maybe 2 days. Either way, no one will ever find your body. They got back in the van. But before they drove away, Rashid did something I'll never forget. He threw something small from the window. It landed in the sand a few feet from me. Then they were gone, disappearing into the desert in a cloud of dust. I ran to what Rashid had thrown. It was a small water bottle. Not much. Maybe enough for a day if I was careful. And wrapped around it was a piece of paper with coordinates written on it. And a single word in Arabic. Sorry. I stood there as the sun climbed higher, feeling the heat building, feeling my situation settling into my bones. I was going to die here. But then I remembered something my grandmother used to tell me. She grew up Bedouin before she married into royalty. She used to say, "The desert doesn't kill those who respect it. It kills those who fear it." I looked at those coordinates. I had no idea where they led, but I had a choice. I could sit here and wait to die, or I could walk. I chose to walk. The first day was hell. The sun was merciless. The sand burned through my thin shoes. I rationed the water, taking tiny sips every few hours. I used my headscarf to protect my face and neck. I walked in the early morning and late evening, resting during the hottest part of the day under any shade I could find, which wasn't much. I kept moving toward those coordinates, using the sun and stars to guide me. My grandmother had taught me the old ways when I was a child, the ways of the desert. I never thought I'd need them, but now they were all that stood between me and death. On the second day, I ran out of water. My lips cracked and bled. My tongue felt swollen. I started seeing things that weren't there. Mirages. Lakes that disappeared when I got close. Trees that turned into rocks. I kept walking. That night, I collapsed. I couldn't go any further. I lay in the sand, looking up at the stars, thinking about my life, about Layla, about my family's betrayal, about all the things I'd never get to do, places I'd never see, people I'd never love. I was ready to let go. But then I heard it. An engine. Faint at first, then growing louder. Headlights cutting through the darkness. A truck was coming toward me. I tried to stand, to wave, but I couldn't move. The truck stopped. Doors opened. Voices speaking in rapid Arabic. Hands lifted me gently. Someone pressed water to my lips. Slowly, a woman's voice said, "Drink slowly." I opened my eyes. The face looking down at me was weathered, kind, framed by a traditional Bedouin headscarf. "You're safe now," she said. "We've been looking for you." "Who are you?" I croaked. "Friends of Rashid," she said. "He sent us the coordinates. He told us what happened. We're going to get you somewhere safe." They took me to a small settlement deep in the desert. A place that didn't exist on any map. A place where people who needed to disappear could find refuge. For weeks, I recovered there. The family who took me in asked no questions. They gave me food, water, medicine, time to heal. But I couldn't stay hidden forever. I had a choice to make. I could disappear completely, take on a new identity, live out my life in anonymity. Or I could fight back. I could expose what my family had done, what they were still doing. It took me 3 months to decide. 3 months of thinking, planning, gathering my courage. During that time, I learned more about the settlement. It was run by a network of people who helped victims of honor violence, domestic abuse, political persecution. People whose own families had tried to kill them. I wasn't alone. There were dozens of us, all with similar stories of betrayal and survival. One of them, a woman named Fatima, became my friend. She'd been a lawyer before her own family tried to force her into marriage with a man who'd already killed his first wife. She'd escaped, barely, and found her way here. She taught me about the underground networks that existed throughout the Middle East, helping women and dissidents escape oppression. "Your story is important," she told me one night as we sat under the stars. "Not just for you, but for everyone who suffered at the hands of powerful families. But you need to be smart about it. If you go public, they'll deny everything. They'll say you're mentally ill, that you're lying for attention. You need evidence." She was right. The documents I'd seen weren't enough. They were locked away, inaccessible. I needed something more. Something undeniable. That's when I came up with a plan. Rashid had helped me once. Maybe he'd help me again. Through Fatima's network, I managed to get a message to him. A meeting. A chance to get the evidence I needed. It was risky. He could betray me again. He could lead my uncle right to me. But it was a risk I had to take. We met in a small town on the border, in a crowded market where we could blend in. Rashid looked older than I remembered, worn down by guilt and fear. "I'm sorry," he said immediately. "Princess, I'm so sorry. Your uncle threatened my family, my children. I had no choice." "We always have choices," I said coldly. "You chose to let them send me to die." "And I've regretted it every day since," he said. "That's why I threw you the water, the coordinates. I knew if anyone could survive, it was you. Your grandmother was one of the strongest people I ever knew. I saw her in you." "I need your help," I said. "I need copies of those documents, and I need more. Everything you have on what my uncle's been doing, the trafficking, the weapons deals, all of it." He shook his head. "If he finds out I helped you, he'll kill my entire family. If we don't stop him, how many other families will he destroy?" I countered. "How many other girls will disappear into the desert? How many more journalists will have accidents?" Rashid was quiet for a long time. Then he nodded. "I'll get you what you need. But after this, I'm taking my family and disappearing. We can never see each other again." 2 weeks later, he delivered a USB drive with copies of everything: financial records, photographs, recorded conversations, names of government officials who were on my uncle's payroll, details of criminal operations spanning multiple countries. It was enough to bring down not just my uncle, but dozens of others. But there was something else on that drive, something I wasn't expecting. Evidence that my father knew. He'd known everything, all along. He wasn't the weak man my uncle claimed. He was complicit. He'd allowed my uncle to operate freely, to commit these crimes, to traffic in human misery. And when I became a threat, he'd agreed to let his own brother dispose of me. That broke something in me. I could understand my uncle's evil. He was a monster. But my father? The man who'd taught me to ride horses, who'd encouraged my education, who'd told me I could be anything I wanted. He'd chosen his wealth and power over his own daughter's life. I spent days in a dark room, crying, raging, grieving for the father I thought I knew. But eventually, the grief transformed into something else. Determination. If I was going to do this, I would do it right. I would burn it all down. Through Fatima's contacts, I connected with an international journalist, someone with credibility and protection, someone my family couldn't easily silence. I sent her everything, every document, every recording, every piece of evidence, and I told her my story. The article came out 6 months after I was left to die in the desert. It was published simultaneously in major newspapers across Europe and America. The headline read, "Inside the Saudi royal family's criminal empire, a princess's account of corruption, murder, and betrayal." Within hours, it went viral. Within days, there were calls for investigations from multiple governments. Within weeks, several of the officials named in the documents had been arrested. My uncle disappeared. Some say he fled to Russia. Others say my family dealt with him quietly to protect their reputation. I don't know. I don't care. My father issued a statement denying everything. He claimed I was mentally unstable, that I'd fabricated the documents, that this was all a desperate attempt for attention. But the evidence was too strong, too detailed, too corroborated by other sources. I'm still in hiding. I move every few months, never staying in one place too long. There are still people who want me dead. My family has a long reach. But I'm not afraid anymore. I survived the desert. I survived my own family's betrayal. I can survive anything. Sometimes I think about what my life would have been like if I'd never opened that drawer, if I'd never looked at those documents. I'd still be a princess, living in luxury, ignorant of the blood money that paid for it all. Part of me wishes I'd stayed ignorant. Life would be easier. But I can't unknow what I know. I can't unsee what I saw. And I can't let their crimes go unpunished, even if it costs me everything. There's a Bedouin saying my grandmother taught me. The desert reveals truth. Under the sun, there is nowhere to hide. My family tried to use the desert to hide their truth, to bury me along with their secrets. But the desert did the opposite. It stripped away everything false, everything comfortable, everything I thought I knew about myself and my world. It revealed the truth. And now you know the truth too. My name is Amira. I was born a princess. I was sent to die in the desert, but I came back. And I'm still here, still fighting, still refusing to let them win. Because here's what they didn't understand. When you take everything from someone, when you strip them down to nothing but sand and sun, and the will to survive, you don't destroy them. You forge them into something stronger than they ever were before. I am no longer the naive girl who picked that lock in my father's study. I am no longer the princess who believed in fairy tales. I am a survivor. I am a witness. I am a woman who knows that some truths are worth dying for, and worth living for. My uncle wanted to silence me. My father wanted to erase me. The desert was supposed to claim me. But I'm still here. My voice is stronger than ever. And every person who hears this story, who shares it, who refuses to look away from the truth, makes me a little bit safer. Makes the next girl a little bit safer. So thank you for listening. Thank you for bearing witness. Thank you for being part of the truth that the desert revealed. Because in the end, that's all we have. The truth. And the courage to speak it, no matter the cost. They tried to send me to the desert to die. But the desert sent me back stronger, angrier, and determined to make sure the world knows exactly what they did. And I'll keep telling this story until every last person responsible faces justice. That's my testimony. That's my truth. And no amount of money, no amount of power, no amount of threats will ever silence me again.